Losers don't get invited to Christmas, my dad declared about my 18-year-old son, right after mocking the backup medical school he'd been accepted to. This is honestly just embarrassing, his cousin chimed in. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I responded with action. The next day, my parents were blowing up my phone in a full-blown panic. It all started with the wine. Not drinking it, at least not yet. I mean the bottle my son proudly held up as he walked into the kitchen, his smile so bright you'd think he'd just been awarded a Nobel Prize for most thoughtful holiday gift. Got the last one at the third store, he said, cheeks pink from the cold. It's Grandpa's second favorite. I tried 5 places for the usual, but no luck. I can keep checking later, though. He was proud, genuinely proud of that mid-range bottle of red. It probably cost him more in gas than it did at the register. But of course, this wasn't really about wine. It was about everything the wine represented: inclusion, respect, being part of a tradition. He was still under the illusion that he belonged, that he was welcomed. I had just ended a phone call. My hands were still flat on the counter, steadying me. I hadn't moved. Not really. I just stood there while his voice floated over to me, light, easy, as though nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something inside me had cracked open during that call, a feeling I hadn't allowed myself in years. Rage. And underneath that, something colder. Clarity. It was my mother who had called. She always starts with this off-putting, sugary politeness when she's about to say something awful, like a flight attendant smiling calmly before announcing a crash landing. We've invited so many guests this year, she said breezily. It's going to be very tight. Then came the real message. We were wondering if maybe your son could just sit this one out. Just this year, she added quickly. You're still welcome, of course. It's not personal. But in that moment, I knew it absolutely was personal. And then, like some twisted Greek chorus of entitlement, I heard the rest of them. My dad's voice rang out in the background, not even pretending to be discreet. Tell him losers don't get Christmas. And the worst part? My mom shushed him. Shh, you can't say it like that, she whispered, which meant she knew it was cruel. But he didn't stop. He doubled down. That backup med school, just embarrassing. Then my nephew, that cousin, piled on. The same one who spent his teen years acting like humility was toxic. What's it called again? He asked, laughing through his nose. Oh, right, mediocre state. Do they even have cadavers? Or just plastic skeletons? I wish I could say I ended the call with grace, but I didn't. I just hit the red button and stood there like I'd been unplugged. It wasn't just the cruelty of their words, it was the ease with which they said them. Like it was a running joke they'd been telling behind our backs for who knows how long. And the most heartbreaking part? My son hadn't heard a thing. He was still in the living room, carefully wrapping a small box in cheap paper, a gift he'd picked out just for my mom. I think it was her favorite tea, the kind he'd ordered online 2 weeks ago, just to make sure it arrived on time. His face lit up as he told me about it. They were almost out of this, too, he said. Funny how stuff disappears around Christmas, huh? I nodded. Maybe I blinked. I honestly don't remember. Because what do you say to a kid who still believes that effort earns you love? I didn't say anything. Not then that evening. I did what most emotionally destabilized mothers do when they've just realized their parents are quietly horrible. I doom-scrolled, and that's when I saw it, a meme posted by my nephew. The golden boy, the one who goes to that law school with the cult of prestige and a tuition price tag that could buy a small island. The meme showed a toy doctor set one of those plastic kits for toddlers. Caption read, "Graduates from Crestwell Med, like I diagnose you with vibes, I wish I were making that up." There were comments, too, from his friends, other polished, overgroomed prep school clones. Not a real school, pretty sure you can apply there with a library card and a dream. I think my dentist went there. That explains a lot. Fake school, fake degrees, fake doctors. And then I saw it. My dad had liked the post, not just seen it, not just scrolled past. He liked it. Thumb up, endorsed. I felt something slide out of place inside my chest. Not break, just shift. My son. Still didn't know he was in his room, probably writing a Christmas card in that neat handwriting he inherited from no one in this family. Probably saying something like, "Thank you for always believing in me." And I had no idea how I was going to tell him that they didn't even want him at the table, that they were laughing behind his back while he planned out his gift bags, that he had been disinvited, not because of some room shortage, not because of a head count, but because he hadn't picked a school with a name that stroked their egos. They called him a loser and somehow still expected me to show up, smile, pass the stuffing. I could feel the storm building behind my ribs, and no, I didn't shout. But I did take action the next day. They were the ones calling me in a panic. I used to think student debt was the dumbest decision I'd ever made. Then I found out I'd been sending money every month to the same people who called my son a loser behind his back. But we'll get there to understand what happened last Christmas. You first need to understand what kind of family I come from. We didn't just believe in education. We believed in prestige. The name on your degree was everything Harvard could have offered. A master class in how to boil water, and my parents would have fought each other for a seat. Both of them worked in science study careers in academia. Think small offices, coffee-stained journals, long-winded debates over journal articles. They weren't wealthy, but they wore their degrees like medals of honor, and they expected us to do the same. I have an older brother, 3 years ahead of me, and somehow always 10 steps further in their eyes. According to them, he was exceptionally gifted. He just needed structure, and by structure, I mean endless tutors, coaching programs, extra courses, academic summer camps. Nothing was too expensive. Nothing was too much. By the time I was 5, I was being coached for a competitive primary school entrance exam. There were flashcards on the fridge, pop quizzes at dinner. At one point, I had a laminated test schedule pinned to my bedroom door. I'm not kidding. The pressure wasn't called pressure, it was called support. When my brother got into a prestigious law program, it was treated like a family coronation. My parents printed the acceptance email, framed it, celebrated with a dinner that probably cost more than my first apartment security deposit. They paid his tuition, housing books, snacks, everything. He was the investment, then came my turn. We'd love to help, they said. But things are a little tight right now. Funny how the money had run out by the time I arrived at the same milestone, but they still wanted me to go to that top-tier university. They just didn't want to pay for it. We'll help you apply for scholarships. My dad offered loans are totally normal, my mom added, and once you graduate, it'll all be worth it. So I went, I took the loans, I studied hard, I did everything right, and I graduated with a shiny diploma and over $100,000 in debt. No one clapped. When the payments started, no one offered to help when the interest piled up. Now I'm in my early 40s. I have a good job. I'm doing okay, but I'm still carrying that debt like a second spine, living paycheck to paycheck, skipping things, budgeting. Hard smiling through it all. When my parents retired, they told me they were struggling. We didn't save enough. They said, you know how it is in academia, and because I was still trying to be a good daughter, I believed them. I started sending money. Just a little at first, grocery bills, electricity, a few small things. Then it became more regular. I cut corners in my own life, skipped vacations, skipped upgrades, delayed fixing my roof. I figured it was what good daughters do. It never occurred to me that they might be using that money for something else. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about how I raised my son. I never sold him. The fantasy never told him that college was only worthwhile if the name looked good on a resume. I told him to choose a path he could live with and afford. I didn't want him to go through what I did, and he listened. He watched me struggle. He heard the sighs at bill time. The way my voice changed when I checked my bank balance, he never said much, but I know he saw it so. When college decisions came, he made his own quiet choice. He got into a big-name university, a school my parents would have lost their minds over, but he didn't tell them. He didn't want their input. He didn't want the pressure. Instead, he chose a local med school. Not top 10, not Ivy, but solid, reputable. He got a partial scholarship. He could live at home. No loans. I was proud, not just of the acceptance, but of the wisdom in his decision. He chose peace over prestige. But to my parents, that decision made him an embarrassment. They couldn't see past the ranking. They couldn't hear the logic over the sound of their own egos cracking. It shouldn't have surprised me not when you look at how they treat my brother's son just 1 year older than mine. He's following in his dad's footsteps. Law school. Big name. Big price tag. He doesn't work. Doesn't have to. My brother and his wife paid for private school. Test prep tuition, the works. He's smug, arrogant, and frankly unpleasant. But to my parents, he's the golden grandchild. They post about him online, long captions, proud updates. They call him the next great mind, my son. They barely mention him, maybe a throwaway sentence. If I bring him up first every year, my parents host Christmas dinner. It's always the same group. Family. Old friends. Academic colleagues turned family friends. It's tradition. And over the years, I became close to many of them. So did my son. These weren't just my parents' guests. They were our people. He grew up sitting at that table, calling them aunt and uncle, even when they weren't blood. They came to his concerts, sent birthday cards. Just about school, he felt known. He felt loved. So when my mom called and said there wasn't room for him this year, it didn't feel like logistics. It felt like rejection. And when I heard my dad in the background call him a loser, felt like betrayal. I used to think the worst mistake I ever made was going into debt for a diploma. But maybe it was believing after all these years that my parents could change. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was sad, not even because I was angry. I'd passed those exits hours earlier. What I felt now was something colder, sharper, like glass shifting underfoot. I'd spent years walking that tight trope between compliance and dignity. But this has pushed me off my son. Meanwhile, was in the living room studying his first winter break in med school, and he was reviewing anatomy. Like it was a Netflix show, I stood in the doorway, and all I could think was, how the hell do I tell him? How do you tell your kid that his own family thinks he's beneath them, that he's not welcome, not because he did anything wrong, but because he didn't perform well enough for them? I sat down across from him. I need to talk to you, I said, about Christmas. He blinked, pen still poised in his hand. I told him everything. The phone call, the voices in the background, the laughter, the words, the meme-like cruelty. He didn't interrupt, just sat there listening. And when I finished, he didn't cry, didn't raise his voice. He simply shut his textbook, stood up, and walked to his room. The door clicked closed behind him, sharp, final, like a period at the end of a sentence. That was it. No, it's okay. No, I don't care. Just silence. And somehow that stung more than any shouting match ever could. I stayed there for a while, letting it ache. Then I reached for my laptop. A few weeks ago, my mom had sent out a group email. She'd CC'd the usual crowd. Subject line, Christmas dinner. Please confirm allergies. One guest was vegan, another had a hazelnut allergy, someone else was gluten-free. I scanned the list again. 18 names. I recognized each one. Half of them were people I'd always called aunt and uncle, even though we weren't blood. The others were longtime friends of the family. They'd known me since my teens. They liked my son. They sent him books when he was small, $10 Starbucks gift cards for his birthdays. They weren't my parents' people. They were ours. So I picked up the phone. No speeches, no campaigning, just call after call. Hey, just letting you know we won't be coming this year. They uninvited my son. They said there wasn't room, but there are already 18 confirmed guests. You do the math. Some reacted with shock. Others went quiet. One person even swore. And then came that same pause every single time. That beat of breath when someone realizes they're about to be forced to choose. And most of them did. They chose us. By Christmas Eve, 13 of the 18 had reached out. Subtle RSVPs. We'll be there. We don't agree with this. Your son is family. Some offered apologies. Some didn't. I wasn't looking for groveling, only honesty. Even my brother's wife texted me separately. I didn't know they said that. I'm so sorry. I'll come to your place instead. Just don't tell Mark yet. Mark, my brother, wasn't invited. Neither was his son. I told myself this wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness. Christmas morning, I woke up early. Not from joy or excitement, but because, as it turns out, vengeance takes a surprising amount of preparation. I roasted, I basted, I folded napkins with a level of spite origami never intended. My son stayed mostly quiet throughout the day. He offered to help, but I waved him off. I think he understood. I needed this more than he did. By 5 p.m., the house was buzzing. The table strained under the weight of food. The lights glowed warmly. The tree sparkled, as if it knew the whole story. People showed up bearing wine, gifts, and hugs that lingered just a little longer than usual. They told my son they were proud of him. That med school, any med school, was something to celebrate. They reminded him of his third-grade science fair volcano, the one with the exploding lava and the oversized safety goggles. They made him laugh. They made him feel seen. And then my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. Of course. I stepped out onto the porch to answer. Cold air. Stillness. My hands still slick from carving the turkey. "What did you do?" she barked. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just pure rage. "What the hell did you say to them?" "To who?" I asked, calm and steady. "Everyone," she hissed. "We made dinner for 18 people. 2 showed up, and one of them was your brother." "Sounds like a peaceful evening," I said. "Plenty of leftovers." "This isn't funny, Carolyn." No, it's not. "Did you tell them we uninvited him?" "You did uninvite him." "That's not how we meant it. You said there wasn't space." "There wasn't," she snapped. Not for a loser, right?" I cut in. "Not for someone who picked a school that wouldn't make your friends jealous." Dramatically, not angrily. Just. Finally back inside, the room was loud and warm. Someone had pulled out a board game. Someone else was refilling wine. My son was on the couch, laughing with a woman who used to babysit him. He looked okay. He looked all right, and for the first time in a long time. So did I. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a tantrum. But I made damn sure they heard me anyway, by the time the last guest left and I finished scrubbing gravy off the stovetop. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. Something had shifted permanently. My son was upstairs. I could hear him pacing. Maybe on the phone, maybe not. He hadn't said much all night. He'd smiled. Eat and thanked everyone, but underneath it, I could see the wound not bleeding anymore, but still open. I stood at the sink, hands damp, and stared at the window. Then I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, and clicked into the recurring transfer I'd been sending to my parents every month. You know what's funny? I didn't even blink. I just hit cancel. No ceremony, no final message, just done. I used to think I was being a good daughter. They were retired. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, and they said their pensions didn't stretch far. So I helped quietly, steadily. It wasn't much, but enough to keep their bills covered. But now if they could afford to humiliate my son, they didn't need my help. Not financially, not emotionally, not at all, and I meant it. 3 days later. I got the notification. My mom had posted something in the wider family group chat, not the private one, for birthdays and photos, but the big one. The look how functional we are. Chat with extended family, second cousins, and people who think every forwarded prayer counts as intimacy. The post was short, a cropped picture of her mostly empty dinner table, and this caption, "Some people don't understand what it means to ruin Christmas. I hope they're proud of themselves." No names, just venom. I stared at it for a while, then set my phone down, made myself tea, and came back. 10 minutes later. There were already replies, a few question marks. "Oh, what happened?" From a cousin in Florida, one of my dad's sisters chimed in with a passive, "That's such a shame I didn't argue. I just posted 3 things first," a screenshot of the meme. Her golden grandson had shared, the one mocking my son's med school caption read, "Graduates from Crestwell Med, like I diagnose you with vibes." And right underneath it, like, from my father. Second a line I typed myself. No screenshot, just memory. What my dad said in the background during the call. "Losers aren't welcome for Christmas." And third one final sentence, just so we're clear. My son was never welcome. That was their choice. Then I put my phone down. I didn't watch the chaos unfold. I didn't need to. But later that night, my inbox was full. Not apologies, just quiet, support, a few simple messages. "Thank you for saying something." We had no idea, nothing from my parents, just silence. It was almost 2 weeks before I saw them. No warning, no call, just a knock at the door. One Wednesday afternoon, I opened it with a half-full laundry basket in my arms and froze. They stood on my front step like nothing had happened, like this was a social visit. My mom spoke first. We thought it was time to talk. I didn't move. Talk about what she gave. That tight, brittle smile I knew too well. "Let's not make this worse than it already is. We just want to clear the air." Clear the air. I echoed my dad, shifted beside her. "You're ruining this family over nothing." There was not an apology, not a scrap of remorse, just projection, like always. "We've always supported you," he added. "This isn't fair." I set the laundry basket down slowly. You excluded him from a holiday that's supposed to be about family and laughed while doing it. My mother flinched. We didn't mean it like that. I don't care how you meant it. I said you meant it enough to say it, and you let everyone else laugh about it too. We didn't think it would be taken so seriously, she offered. Then maybe you shouldn't have said it at all. She opened her mouth again, but I stepped back and shut the door. Not slammed, just closed, from done. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, and I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. 3 days later. There was another knock. I opened the door expecting Amazon, who was my nephew, Mr. Meme Poster himself, in an overpriced coat and smug expression, trying to look humble. Hey, he said, can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe. About what? He gave a sheepish shrug. I just feel like things got out of hand. I didn't mean for it to blow up like this. No, you didn't mean to mock your cousin's school and call him a fake doctor. He winced. It was a joke. I thought that was clear. I crossed my arms. If it was that obvious, then why are you standing here now? He paused, and then, without meaning to, he revealed everything. Because they were helping me out. Financially, you know. So, if you cut them off. I stared at him, the realization creeping in. Wait, I said slowly. You're telling me the money I was sending, the support I thought was keeping them afloat, that was actually going to you? He hesitated. Didn't deny it, didn't need to. The heat surged through my chest, but I didn't lash out. I didn't have to. You thought this was between you and them? I said, voice steady. But they were using my help to inflate your ego and then used it to humiliate my son? I never asked for that money, he muttered. But you had no problem spending it, did you? I snapped back. He said nothing. Behind me, I could hear my son moving around in the kitchen. I didn't want him to come to the door. He didn't need to witness this. So I turned to my nephew, one hand already resting on the door. Leave, I said, quietly but firmly, and don't come back. He opened his mouth, probably to offer some half-baked apology, but I closed the door before he could speak. No dramatic send-off, no yelling, just a locked door, and for the first time in years, silence that actually felt like peace. It's been a few years since that day. We're still no contact with my parents, my brother, and no surprise, the golden nephew. My son? He's thriving. Still in med school, doing incredibly well. Just started applying for internships and already has a few interviews lined up. He's focused, grounded. He's going to make one hell of a doctor. And best of all, he won't have a single dollar of student debt hanging over him. Not long ago, I heard something through the grapevine. Apparently, my nephew dropped out of that elite law program, didn't even graduate, no degree, just a long string of wasted tuition payments left behind. Something about disciplinary trouble, getting drunk, insulting teammates during a group project. Now, he's trying to get into some local college to salvage what he can. Definitely not the same school my son attends. Even he wouldn't dare. This one's ranked a few rungs lower. I don't know exactly what broke him, and honestly, I'm not sure it matters. But now and then I wonder, was I being too petty that Christmas? Was rerouting the entire guest list over the line? Or was it exactly far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell.